I'd like to, at this point, introduce you to a model from Dr. Brenda Dervin. It's quite interesting. I've been applying this model in the past 20 years. She mentored me for my PhD research. But basically, what's one thing, it's very simple. It's like, no matter what you say to this person, and I call him Mr. Wiggly, and you can tell him, social collaboration is really good for you. Whether he gets it or not, whether he can make sense of it, it really depends on who he or she is, and also what situation, what he's trying to achieve, right? Each one of us, think about you. Let's say you work in a company, you have a role, you sit somewhere in the organization. That's the context. You have goals that you want to achieve, that you want to get to. So that's the outcomes. And you bring with you your experience, your thinking, your habits, and that's the situation part. And then as you need to do your work, from time to time, you see a gap, right? And that's where you struggle. You say, oh, how do I get through that so that I can reach my goals? And at this point in time, you reach out to the channels, the information, the people that can help you to build that bridge, to allow you to cross this bridge to get there. And that's how difficult it is when we actually introduce social in the workplace. Because when you introduce to Mr. Wiggly, whatever you say, unless it makes sense to him, he's not going to do anything, and you're not going to get anywhere. Right, so I learned it in the hard way that I'm always that, and even today, I'm still the person very passionate, evangelizing the use of these tools and also this new way of working within the company. But I also learned to ask the question, what is the downside of going social? And particularly through the eyes of Mr. Wiggly, which could be, looking through the eyes of these colleagues, does social collaboration really help or hurt? Have you asked that question? If you're the chief risk officer or COO or head of sales, head of product, head of marketing, or part of the C-suite, you probably look at your world in a very different way. And whether you see social help or not can also be very different. So let's step back a little bit, right? We talk about social collaboration tools as we all know what it is. So the definition I'm using here is from Andrew McCarthy and social tools, sometimes called Enterprise 2.0. I think we all know that is a set of social media technologies which is being used inside the workplace, right? It's digital, it's mobile. That's one simple publish button allow us to get all the ideas shared across. But I keep reminding myself and my colleagues, if you are introducing social tools, you are at the same time actually introducing a way of working. Notice I didn't use a new way of working, because some companies, maybe it's not new, but for many companies it is. But it's a way of working. What is this way of working like? I call it the lanes principle. It's about allowing people to laterally communicate, no longer top-down or bottom-up, but it's across. Anyone can have a voice, and through the networking effect, you can actually visualize expertise, show the value of the people, of the information you have. And it's emergence. You can't tell, you can't predefine by opening up the dialogue. You will actually know what the outcome is like. And I also believe that it's about self-sufficiency. Sometimes you even call it selfishness. These tools need to allow people to immediately do the work and help them to do the work faster, better. It has to mean something to them as an individual, right? So that's the lanes principle. And if you think about it, I know that we've got this fictitious company cabling management team. I would like to challenge and ask the company, if you're investing in social collaboration tools, are you sure you really want to invest in it? Are you sure you want to embrace this lanes way of working? Will this help you or not to achieve your goals? And is this how you do your work today? If not, how are we going to get there? You can invest in all the tools, but how are you going to get there? So let's take a look at a way to look at the business as a whole, right? And I draw the idea from Jeffrey Moore, who's written a book called Zone to Win. It's not really exactly in the context of what we're talking about today, but he divided the organization into 4 zones, which is quite interesting, because that helps me to think about, if we're going to introduce social into these people who are managing these 4 different zones, what would it mean to them? What would Mr. Wiggly actually think? So let me quickly introduce the 4 zones and then we zoom in. First of all, the productivity zone. I'm sure within any company there will be people, seniors who are in charge of, I know what exactly needs to get done. We want to do it fast, do it quick. We want to make sure that the process is most efficient and there's no rework and everything is done properly according to procedures. Right? That's important. So that's a zone like this. Then that's the performance zone. Those are the people, most likely salespeople. They have sales target. They have something that targets they want to achieve. And they want to move as quickly to that target as possible. Anything that gets in the way, forget about it. That's not helping me to meet my targets. Then there are people in the innovation zone, and they tend to be innovators, slightly doing newer programs, something not as embedded into the mainstream business yet. And that's another zone called incubation zone, which is like you don't even know what you don't know, and you're trying to find out and bubbling up ideas, right? So if you look at this, does this look like your organization? Within any organization, you have people taking care of these different zones. And guess what's the bulk, in terms of the percentage, where would the most of the effort and resources and people will be focusing on? Which zone do you think it will be? I see fingers on this side, right? So the performance zone and the productivity zone. Why? Because that's the bread and butter of the business, right? So this is the area this is how you make money, how you make sure that you're efficient. Unfortunately, like any one of us who are so passionate about social, if you go to these colleagues and say social collaboration, it can break down silos, improve knowledge sharing across boundaries, there's a lot of alarm bells actually ringing, depending what zone you actually are in. And it's very, very scary. I told you, I've got colleagues who almost fainted when I tell him about social collaboration, right? Why? Because if you are in the productivity zone, what do you want to achieve? You want consistency, you want predictability, you want things to move exactly like what you want. Talk about social, that's too unstructured. What? There's no approval process, too scary. Risk is too high. So it's not for me. Then you move to the performance zone. These are the people who need to sell. And they have no time to waste. If there's anything that gets in the way, something that you need me to spend time and invest to learn something new before I can get on, forget about it. I'm doing my job, and I'm doing my job pretty well. Yeah, that's why I'm there. That's why we're meeting the targets. Which leaves us to, let's move to the right-hand side. That's an incubation zone. You ask them to share, they say, oh, but the idea is still bubbling up. It's not concrete enough. It's not, no, we just chat over coffee. It's not ready to be shared. Work out loud? No, not for that zone. So we only leave with ourselves with one zone to start off with. And these are the innovators, yeah? They tend to be more receptive to what is new. And so are we stuck? Is that a very gloomy picture to kick off the event? So what should we do? How do we tackle this? So I've been in this space for a while. I've rolled out like 4 different social collaboration programs to multiple different companies. So here's some of my experience. Where do we go first? We know that the bulk of the business are happily running the business here. So instead of disrupting them, first of all, you go with the people, the innovators, the people who are starting out new programs. They have no legacy, hopefully no archive of documents that need to be moved somewhere. They start from the beginning. So you get a better chance to engage with them. And typically these people who run the change program, they want to engage with people across the company. They really want ideas to come through. They want that kind of engagement. And typical examples in this area would be if you have a very innovative CEO who wants to engage company in a different way, they will go for it. If you have an innovation program, innovation director, most likely like to crowdsource ideas from the company, you use social to do that, that's another typical use case. Unfortunately, if you just stay in this zone, you're not going very far. And I've seen both vendors, tools, which actually choose to just go into this space, or people just can't come out of this zone. So what happens is, if you just stay in this zone, your colleagues who are in the bread and butter of the business, they will say, yeah, this is all fluffy communication stuff. Yeah, it's nice, yeah, maybe some kind of innovation, but that's not part of my day-to-day work. You have not hit me yet. It is not for me. I don't need to think about it when I start working, right? So we need to move to the productivity zone if we want to embed this way of working deeper within the organization. And how do we do that? Just think about the leaders in charge of productivity zone. They want the consistency, they want methodology to be introduced to the company, right? So in this case, what you can do is to make the policies, make those methodology easily accessible so that people actually need to use them to do their day-to-day work. Make it easy for these leaders to to share the must-know with all the staff. And at the same time, allow all this content to be integrated with your the social tool, the social platform, so that it is part of their day-to-day experience. I see a lot of the vendors who want to come into this space, but actually not exactly getting there, because the integration between the social collaboration platform and, for example, document management or day-to-day business application or the intranet is just so far apart, right? You tell people to go there, but basically I don't need to go to the social tool. I have my own business tools to do my work. So that's where we struggle. So some of the examples typically in this zone is like social intranet, when you have the policies there, you can have all the information up there, you can allow people to have the discussion in this space. That start to come into this zone. Then we've covered this too. Then if we look at the performance zone, this zone is actually really the hardest. And why is it the hardest? It's because this time round, you can't push people to go there anymore, right? In the productivity zone, you can say, okay, I put all the content there, you have to come in and use it. Whereas in the performance zone, it's like people are already doing their work pretty well. They're already connecting. They have already got the tools they're very, very familiar with, most likely email, but maybe some other tools that, as a team, they have the communication protocol, they set expectation how they connect with one another. They have habits that they have built up within the high-performing team. Why would they need to change? So for them, it's like anything that is hard, it's a no. And this is really going back to, unless you help them to radically shift the perspective, help them to understand that's a better way of working, they're not going to get close. And the other thing is, from the tools perspective, these tools really need to fit the hands so well, whether it's mobile or any experience when they touch the platform, it has to feel so natural to them. And anything less superior, they will say no. And that's the challenge. And this takes really a long time for us to really change this zone. And one story my colleague shared with me is when email comes into the picture and becomes more mainstream into the workplace, he still has this fax machine sitting next to him. And people ask him why. He said, just in case we still have clients or I still need to use fax to connect with my colleagues in other parts of the world. And he just hang on to this fax machine and say, one day somebody will communicate with me in that way. It never did. And eventually, of course, fax went away. But that's how the change, that's how hard it is. And this is going to be a very long process. Is this all making sense? Yeah? Good. Okay, having said all this, let's say we get this right, and then we move from the innovation zone to the productivity zone to the performance zone, and you get all your colleagues on the social platform. Isn't that great? Have we achieved our goals? Yes? Ah, that's a no there. This is really worrying. That's one big problem. Going back to the Lane's principle, everybody have a voice. We put everybody into a room. Does that mean you have a good dialogue? You have attended many meetings, which may or may not achieve the outcomes you want. Why would we assume that if we give a virtual room to allow people to connect, then suddenly the conversation will be great? I'm not saying that it won't be great, but I'm saying that do you leave it to chance? Or what else can you do to make sure that your company is not just rolling this out? Or this. Is that good communication? How do we make it better? We've already given you the tools to do that. Where do we find that connection point? How do we do that? Do we leave it to chance? Or can we do something more? And I call for all of your help to perhaps together we explore and figure it out a bit more in the next 2 days. Otherwise, social will only deliver empty promises. Who will listen? Who facilitate? Everybody shouts. Who has the voice? Is it just the senior? Do you really invite people to share their voice? Are dissent views allowed? Do people feel comfortable even sharing those views? Do we end up have only like-minded people within the company talking with one another? What about people who don't agree with one another? How do you build the bridges? Otherwise, if you think about this carefully, all these poor communication practices will only amplify in the virtual world. And we all know it's very scalable. So that means it will scale very, very quickly. These practices will carry on. So I've been arguing for a long time that Enterprise 2.0 requires Leadership 2.0. Leadership is the real technology behind it to enable new ways of working. The social collaboration tool, whatever tools you call them in the future, is only an enabler. It's easy to say. You say, oh, we need leadership. But how? What kind of leadership? What do you want me to do differently? Right? If you reflect back on the Lane's principle, there are things we expect people to work in a different way. I have not been trained to work in that way, or have not learned the etiquette yet. You actually need to be very conscious when you engage with your colleagues and the seniors and people from all levels. How do you actually reset the communication protocol? What is considered appropriate, what is not? Can I really say something that contradicts the senior's view? How do you promote the dialogue? You open the space, everybody can talk. But are there people who actually have something to say but don't feel comfortable saying this online? What do you do? How do you help them to get on? How do you help people to learn from one another and learn from your peers and learn from oneself through reflection, asking myself, what do I hear out there? How does that connect with me? How can we make my work better? Or how can I help others to get the work done better? It's also about everyone in the organization, not just the senior, being very curious. You start to ask, search, discover. I've heard from colleagues who say that, particularly in the productivity zone, I'm asked to this job, and I need to spend 99% of my time, keep my head down, and keep going. You ask me to go and ask and search and discover. You know, everything I need to know, I must know. You must have sent it to me already. So that mindset, that behavior, is not intuitive yet in the organization. And even to the last point, be human, is not necessarily something that is normal in the organization. Right? People need to learn how to actually show that humility and humanity in the workplace. And interestingly, in some of the companies that I'm aware of, including my own, we actually have leadership development program who actually put people through their experience to get them to talk and have conversation and reflect on how we connect with one another in a different way. That is the other side of the coin for the social collaboration program that we're rolling out. I won't deep dive into the detail. There's a lot of work that Dr. Brenda Dervin has done with, with this model. And one of the principles is that if we start to ask ourselves and ask our colleagues to tell us more, rather than everybody lecturing one another or everybody tell people all the great work, maybe we can start digging deeper by asking people to share what situation you are in, what you want to achieve, what gaps do you see, what's helpful, what's not helpful, what support do you need, how do you feel. These are all the feelings and what's your wish list. If we open up the dialogue and allow one of us to connect and share, that would allow us to dig deeper, right? It's a journey, but it's like, but rather than, I think the key is rather than saying that, oh, we need to have a cultural change to get these social collaboration tools working. But what is that cultural change, right? And if you look at this, that is a way for us to think about Leadership 2.0 need, Enterprise 2.0 need Leadership 2.0, and Leadership 2.0 need a new communication protocol. And there are ways to consciously build that into the way we design the systems and the way we actually roll out the program. So I've got these two challenges, two challenging questions for our vendors and also for the business executive, right? So if you are designing tools and rolling out tools, I would like to ask you, what do you do to promote deeper dialogue? Or what can you do to promote deeper dialogue? I know we've got tools like rating, like, comment, search, those we all see all the time, right? But how do we avoid just more people commenting, more people shouting out? How do we allow people to connect better? Could it be some intelligence to find others in similar situation, have similar questions, need similar help, allow them to be able to connect and come together? How do we do it in a simple way? And for the business executive, if you're in the management, what can you do to promote deeper dialogue? Considering a lot of the companies, the culture can be still very hierarchical. People are not allowed to fail. You need to have a good plans. Everything needs to be very precise. And with this lanes way of working, how do you actually really introduce this new way of working within your organization? Is this about better conversational leadership, getting people to learn how to engage with one another better? Is this about physical space design? Again, to promote that mindset and culture that we connect in a different way? Is this about role modeling themselves? Is this about having better facilitation of dialogue? Giving permission to all colleagues to share, including things you may not like to hear? I think that's a lot that we need to think about as we go into the next 2 days. For those of you who are interested in Dr. Brenda Sturvin's work and the model, there's also a paper which is available for all of you to download. You see an example of how the model, sense-making model, has been applied to design how you actually roll out a blog. Just as simple as rolling out a blog, how do you consider designing in a way so that you can roll out deeper dialogue? At this point, hopefully I have not lost you all. I'm going to come to the last slide and ask us all to reflect on what I have just shared with you. What are the things that you agree with, or strongly disagree with? What's helpful, and maybe what I have confused you. So I'm opening up the floor to let the hidden voice to come out and to kick off this event. Thank you very much.